Hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and today I'm thrilled to be talking about the film The Devil's Bath with writer and directors Veronika Franz and Severin Fiala. And starting off, I mean, this came from a lot of research that Kathy Stewart had been doing about the idea of suicide by proxy around the 17th and 18th century, which is so much at the center of this story. And I was really interested in the fact that you got the chance to read certain details of what women would be talking about when they were essentially awaiting their executions, because that's really the one place in the research where you get the opportunity to hear their own voices. And I was interested in how that informed the central character of Agnes for you both in making this film.
I mean, like as you said, it's just like a document that you rarely come across. So we felt it's quite a treasure because those people, and mainly women in history, never had a voice of their own and nobody was listening. And here you have like, because those women committed atrocious crimes, they were really interrogated in great detail and length. So there is like 80 pages of this woman talking about her life and her fears and her sorrows, also her joy, briefly maybe. And that was just like incredible and informed the character of Agnes 100%. I mean, of course, um, it's an actress playing her and she brings on like things of her own, but in general it's just like the story of this woman, and we try uh, to be true to her story.
Yeah, and actually, it was not only that those protocols shaped the character of Agnes, it was our emotional starting point. So, like the moment we came across and we read like this interrogation files, we were kind of intrigued and hypnotized almost, because we really could feel for her and kind of understand what she was living through, and we also kind of could kind of connect to the present times.
And it's such a complicated idea and theme to present to the audience in a way that feels understood through character, because essentially there were these swaths of women who just were suffering immense depression and didn't want to be on this earth anymore. But because of their religious connection, they felt like if they committed suicide, that they wouldn't go to heaven. And so they ended up taking children's lives because it was seen as the child is pure, they'll never get to sin. And so how did you set about, how do we want to explain all of the intricacies of this to the audience, but in a way that is always centered around our character and story?
I mean, I think this is like a question we've been asking ourselves like several times for years and years, because like it's very different, like how much people know about, let's say, religion or the dogmas of religion. So I think in Austria, for example, which is quite a Catholic country, most of those implications would be rather clear to everybody, like watching the film, whereas in other countries it's totally different. And we hate to be like over explanatory in our films, so it was really a tough balance to get right in order to like for everybody to understand what's the implications without over explaining them. And for example, like our French distributors, now world sales agents, they when they saw the first cut, they didn't seem to understand it enough, so they felt like they didn't get it. And then that kind of opened our eyes, and we realized, okay, it's not that clear for other people, so it's a delicate thing to get right.
We also wanted to kind of, how do you say that, like to put it on an like on a more general level, and not only talk specifically about like Catholic Catholic religion, but also about dogmatism or about rules of society. Back then it was religion. In our days there are different kind of rules or different kind of dogmas, so to speak, you have to kind of follow, and we wanted to talk about that.
And within that, it's quite interesting in the way that you open up the film, and we see this unknown woman with a baby, and then we see her drop the baby to its death, and it's quite a harrowing and shocking opener. And then it feels like you almost go backwards in then explaining how we got to that point, and that that's not the only instance of this happening. And so where did the idea to open the film in that way come from?
I think it's just like it was unbearable for us because we like dark films, and it was unbearable for us to start the film with a wedding and joy. So we needed something else to open the film.
And we also wanted, I think, to kind of emphasize that it's kind of not the fate of one singular woman, but kind of like it was like maybe 3 to 5 generations of people who kind of did that. So we wanted to kind of, yeah.
Actually, there was even a plan to have like an epilogue as well, showing another case, which was simply too much after like everything the audience has lived through at that point. But still, like we shot even a third case, like to show that it's a phenomenon like going on and continuing to go on.
And there was something that you were mentioning a little bit before, Veronika, in terms of the themes of the movie and, all of the rules and structures that society had, they still exist in different ways today. And it's so fascinating how you can watch this real period piece, but feel so connected to all of the ideas and themes. And was that something when you were writing the script that you were thinking about throughout the process for both of you?
Yeah, it was clear for us, like as much as like this protocols and the story of this woman touched us like emotionally, we always knew that making a film about the past, like only about the past, doesn't make much sense. It's not meant to be a history lesson or like a museum visit. We always wanted to say something about like life today and society today. And Agnes, like when we read the court transcripts, we felt she had very modern problems in certain aspects. She was, or she seemed to have been a perfectionist in a way, and she always thought she wasn't good enough. She always looked for the fault in her, in herself in a way, and that is kind of what, yeah, made what made the whole thing happen, maybe. And I think this is a very modern theme. So it's like also depression, which is in most countries, let's say, still a taboo or not talked about enough. And yeah.
Yeah.
I also thought one of the interesting details in how you explore everything that she's going through is it's not that one monumental thing happens to her. It's all the little moments of feeling like you're not enough, feeling like you don't fit in the right way. One little criticism can kind of like be a little bit, it's all these paper cuts almost that build. And so was it important to you to explore it in that way versus it being, oh, this big thing happened to her and that's why she's feeling this way?
I'm very happy that you kind of experienced it like that, because that was very important to us. That it's not this one singular reason why you kind of, start being sad or getting a depression, but that it's kind of adding up. Like, also, we wanted to tell, I think you didn't say that before. I mean, she is like a stranger in this new village or in this new family, and so she is also talking about someone who doesn't fit in, who is kind of maybe who is different from the people like around her, and yeah, that creates problems, and that's also a very timely theme.
I think the whole film would be rather meaningless if it was just about one specific evil stepmother or mother-in-law or something like that, because that's like then there is this reason for what happens, and I think it's very easy to explain, and that makes it less meaningful for people watching it and for people today. And I think it's more difficult. It's society in a way, because everybody like with their own means, they are well-meaning. They're trying to also help Agnes. They just don't have the tools to really understand her. But it's not that anybody's hurting her on purpose. It's all like they're well-meaning. And I think this is what makes it more complicated and more complex and interesting, because that's like it's society, and in that time it was religion. I think that created the problem, because it set the rule set, and people behave accordingly, and there is no way to behave in a way that would have saved Agnes for anybody involved. And I think this makes it more tragic and more relevant, because like society still has a set of rules for us today, and we still need to behave accordingly and become unfree in certain aspects of our lives.
And of course, if religion kind of is comforting, and if it helps you kind of to to stay alive or to be happy, then it's a good thing. But the moment it's kind of manipulating and kind of threatening and kind of wants to control you, that's where the problem starts. It's almost like politics, like.
Right. And it's such a great point as well, the idea that people around her mean well and they want to know what to do. What were the interesting aspects of telling a story like this at a time where there just wasn't language and understanding of everything that she's going through? Because what she's going through, we understand in a very specific lens today, but the characters themselves around her don't.
Yeah,
exactly. I think this is why we like it sharpens like our gaze to understand what happens with this woman, but we hope that at the same time it's not something that you can put off and say it, back then people were just all stupid or blind or whatever. But I think it's like we can see and understand the problem, but I hope we still see that it's still a problem today and still as hard to solve today as it used to be in the past.
And also the fact that people back then, they they didn't talk so much, or they didn't, I mean, they talked about work and about the animals they they took care of, but this was kind of very close to us as filmmakers, because we always kind of we are always dreaming, we always dream of silent movies, and where you only have scenes and atmosphere and images, because for us this is kind of the best way to I don't know, to make a vis visually interesting film, and that's what cinema is about. And we're not so much in talking heads.
So that was basically the only thing that we were really looking for when doing a period film, because it's like it's so difficult and there's so many possible traps and dangers for us as filmmakers. But like we at least knew that the world the film is set in would be a silent world, which is something that we really appreciate as filmmakers.
And in terms of the way that you have made it so visually interesting on screen, one of the choices that I love is to have the wedding be kind of bathed in light, and then gradually throughout the film, it gets darker and foggier. And I know that that was a very specific choice in working with your cinematographer, but also at the same time, you were shooting on film. So what was important to you as you kind of gradually made the film darker and darker, and what were some of the challenges that came with that, particularly with a period piece where you're dealing with natural light in dark spaces a lot?
Yeah, I mean, there is lots of things to say about that. I mean, one thing that we generally do, mostly because it helps us and it helps the actors, is shoot the film chronologically for them in order to really grow into the story. But at the same time, this was also very important from a visual point of view, because the journey into darkness you mentioned was a journey into winter time in an area in Austria where winter time is always dark and foggy. So we needed just like to find out the right time to start the film, where it's still sunny and beautiful and the leaves in the trees are colorful. And so we, 1 year before we started shooting the film, we had some person going to all the locations and taking photos 3 times a day just to see how it all changes, in order to be able to start the film at the exact right dates 1 year later. So that was a bit of insanity on our ends, I think. And so was maybe the choice to shoot on film. I mean, it was always clear to us, but it's a huge challenge. As you mentioned, it's a very dark film. We agreed on using mostly available light, or like fire to light scenes. Like even if it's off screen, it was not lights, but it was usually fire. And that's extremely challenging when using film stock, because the light meter the DOPs used set error like basically from day one to the last shooting day, like all the time, because it was just too dark to shoot. And the main location, when we visited it for the first time, like everybody when entering the house would put would get their cell phones out and their flashlights because it was too dark to just walk around. And the DP was like, okay, this is going to be really interesting. But yeah, in film we trust, and there is something on it.
Right, it looks so beautiful on screen. And one of the aspects that I found so interesting as well in terms of the choices that you had to make is this isn't a community that was being written about historically, and or being in paintings in terms of images of what would the clothes that they wear look like. And so as much as you did have specific research and people working on the film with you in that era, what were some of the spaces where you had to really interpret and make specific choices, even down to the idea of, well, I feel like the costumes, there'd be, a very handmade feel, and maybe they wouldn't fit perfectly because they've been handed down to different people.
Yeah, I mean, we worked a lot on that because we didn't want it to feel, I mean, there are no paintings in Austria. There are only kind of two or one very naive painting from this period about these people, like about farmers. And so we were kind of free on one hand. On the other hand, we had three historians working on on lots of details or on research, how, I mean, to kind of collect what we know about the time. And so, yeah, I mean, we know they when it comes to the costumes, they use natural materials, colors. So we knew all of that. And as you mentioned, we kind of agreed with our costume designer that every kind of costume has to have like mistakes in a way, because they're too big, too small, or kind of whatever. And but in the end, the first day when they put the costumes on, like the three main actors, they looked still like you always said, in costume. So it looked artificial. It didn't look real. And we were desperate. And so, but then we kind of, the only idea we had is, yeah, just keep kind of wearing those costumes as long as you can during day and night, sleep with them. And actually that really helped. So after a month or like 6 weeks, it looked totally normal. So there was one day they went to the supermarket and kind of forgot that they were even wearing their costumes, and people would stare at them. It was a little village like in Upper Austria, and then they, that's in Lower Austria, because okay, then they realized, oh, it's because I still wear my costume and I just forgot about it.
And I think this was the most important lesson that we learned. It's not so much about like what does the costume look like, but it's mostly about how do people wear it, and how do they, like, if they feel normal doing what they do, wearing what they wear, then I think it will feel normal. And this is more important actually than being 100% historically accurate, because then you might be 100% accurate, but it still feels like watching a museum piece. And that's something we really didn't want for the film. We wanted it to feel normal. We wanted the world to feel normal and the people to feel normal. And so I think the goal was to make them feel normal in like their costumes, in their houses, with the work they do, in order to achieve that for the film.
We also kind of made them move into those houses, and so they cooked in there with the fire they had, and the kind of, yeah, the like the what weeds they had, and they cooked for us. Actually, it was really good.
And I think this is like this is so important, because like how normally you would, like as a director, maybe tell the actors how people used to cook back then and what to do, and then it feels like, or at least to us it feels like staged or not real enough. But if you have like the actress cook there for real, she will find out all of those things by herself. For example, if it's dark outside, the only source of light is like underneath the pot, it's the fire. So you would never see what's inside the pot. So if you want to see inside the pot and see if it's burning, like the food you're cooking, then you need to have this burning stick, and you need to put it in your mouth, because you need to hold the pot with one hand and steer it with the other hand. Otherwise, you cannot keep working. And it just took them like a few minutes to find that out, and it feels natural because they found it out. And we didn't tell them, or we didn't have to tell them. And I think we try to work like that because it makes everything feel more authentic and more real.
Also, we worked with, to make it even more real, we worked with real people. So lots of the farmers, the so-called extras, we don't have so many extras in Austria. It's not like a profession like in the US. So we actually worked with a lot of real people, like farmers and fishermen. And yeah, some of them have their like actually hats they wear when they're doing their work in our days. So, but you would never see that because it just feels so normal.
It's so wonderful. And I also wanted to talk about some of the scenes later in the film and some of the spoilers. And, you know, in first talking about the sequence where Agnes takes a child's life on screen, you know, I wanted to ask about casting the young kid, because I know that you had a lot of responses to the casting call. There were things like having a counselor, having people on hand, and really making sure that you had a kid who could tap into the emotions, but also that understood this is a performance, this is fiction, this isn't real, and, you know, having their parents present as well. And so how did you set about making sure that you were going to be able to get the emotional performance that you needed from such a young new performer, but also making sure that you really took care of him in the circumstance because of the story?
Yeah, like getting such a performance used to be very easy. In the 1980s, there is like DVD commentary tracks where like a child is crying in a film, and they asked like the director, "How did you do that?" And they said, "Yeah, that was easy. We had the father of the child, and he said, 'Your mom just died,' and then the child started to cry, and then they said, 'No, no, I was lying. No, your mom's alive.' Then they did take two and said, 'No, no, I was mistaken. Your mom is actually dead.' Then the child started to cry, and then it was like, and then they said the problem is you can only do this a few times, because then the child realizes it's not real. And I think, of course, we don't want to work like that at all, and that was the challenge, like as you also said before, because like we really needed to have a child who is young but understands that it's a performance and it's nothing that we force upon him, but that is something that he is willing to give to us and give to the film. So that's why we actually, for a part of just 2 days, we received like over 1,000 casting call responses.
Over months, we have to say. We were looking
month
for.
And we knew it would be like, we thought actually it's impossible to find somebody in Austria. It's a small country, and we felt we need to find a way, like how not to show like this atrocious crime. We wanted to show it because I think it's very important for the film, but actually we didn't believe we would find anybody able to pull it off. And then Elias, the boy who plays the murder victim, he sent us a casting call, and it's actually like, even in the first castings, he could just do that because he understood like how to like think about stuff that had like made him sad, and he could really do this like all on his own. So that was very important to us. Still, we wanted to have him feel comfortable or as much as possible. So his father was around during the shoot, and of course, there's all the normal precautions that you would take during a film shoot, like counselors and stuff like that. But yeah, we felt it was kind of a miracle that we found somebody able to play that.
We also tried to get to know him as good as possible, like before. So we visited him like a couple of times, and he got to know Anja Plaschk, who is the main actress. Yeah, so we kind of tried to kind of.
With all the actors and actresses with us, it's always about trust in a way, because like it's a journey, and like as we said, we shoot chronologically, so we move into darkness together in a way. And they would only do it with us, and we only with them, if there was like 100% trust relationship established. And I think this takes time, and which is why, for example, we pushed the whole shoot for another year after deciding that we would want to do the film with Anja Plaschk, because we felt we really need to get to know her well, and she really needs to get to know us in order for this whole thing to work. So we pushed the film another year just to achieve that, and to like, we got really good friends in that time, and I think this is why the whole thing works.
And she's so incredible in the film. And one of the scenes I wanted to talk about with her is, the confession sequence, because you brought in a real priest and had her play it as, this is a confession of your life. And I think it's so interesting that you immediately knew, like, this is just going to be one take. We don't want to try and like tap into this multiple times, because there's so many things and so many beats that happen in that entire sequence. And I even love the framing where the camera's just like looking directly down at her face. And so how did you set about coming up with the framing, the idea of bringing in a real priest and kind of setting her up for best success to do that all in one take?
I think like bringing in a real priest is just like what Veronika mentioned before, like our part of our working method. We also brought in real fishermen. So I think it always adds something if you have real people. So that's kind of what we would normally do. And like shooting chronologically, had Anya experience like her whole story before having this very moment. So I think this also helped. And I think the framing maybe, or the camera position, that's something we maybe thought of, because like what touched us so much when reading the interrogation protocols originally is that we somehow had the feeling somebody was very directly talking to us. And that was what was so emotionally touching about it. And Anya looking straight into the camera and straight at us for those moments was maybe an attempt to recreate that feeling of a very direct connection with the audience for maximum impact in a way. And yeah, I think the whole scene is like a payoff, like of everything that we did up to it. Was the second to last shooting day, I think, and it was like a payoff of everything that has been done up to that point.
and it's the last confession. I mean, it's her last confession, and we kind of told Anya that. So if you would confess the last time in your life, it's only one shot. You cannot confess twice, or you cannot make it kind of different or better next time. So we knew she kind of, we do that once, and
It actually creates, of course, it puts like, I think it's on the one hand, it puts more pressure like on Anya to get it right and get it real the first time. On the other hand, I think it's also easier because it's not 27 takes of something, but it's just like this thing, and whatever comes out of it will be the thing. So
you can give everything you have. That said, we have to say, or we have to point out that Anya, she gives everything she has. Actually, not only one time, but 10 times. She's very disciplined, even though she's not a professionally trained actress. As she is a musician, she can repeat scenes like really 10 times, completely the same, which surprised us, because we thought, okay, she's not a trained actress, she might not be able to kind of do that, but she did, and with other scenes, not with that one, and her. I mean, she was just a gift of God, because she was very professional on one hand. On the other hand, she was very open to experience everything, to kind of let her feelings flow, or to kind of be there. And
we've never had such a collaboration before with an actress. It was like all we would have ever wished for.
It's amazing. And lastly, I wanted to talk about the final sequence of scenes in the film, which is her execution, because there's that idea for the community that it's a festivity. The drinking of the blood is something that they believe will cure them of potential ailments and disease. And you have people that we saw at their wedding who are present. But the most interesting facet, I thought, was the connection to the girl in the crowd, because I've heard you say that one of the things was that these women often got the idea for suicide by proxy from these executions. And so I was very curious about if the idea of that connection that we're seeing start to exist with the girl watching her was kind of the setup for the next generation of women going into potentially this idea as well.
I think it's it's a bit more open than that, maybe, because we didn't want to specifically tell this girl is going to have the same fate and do the same thing. but maybe it's also, maybe there is a possibility to escape the pattern. So I think it's the film leaves it open in a way, and you can see it either way. You can say, oh no, it's gonna happen again, or you can say, this is maybe the child that Agnes never had, and she's gonna lead a life that's maybe happy or fulfilling in a way. So I think it's a question the film asks at the end.
I want to sing the praise for this girl too, because we found her when we were looking for the murder victim. We found her, and we always thought of a boy like being killed, so that's why we kind of didn't take her. But she's really talented, and she only had like those, you know, those moments, and she's also not a professional actress. And she gave us this moment. I think, I mean, she has, you know, to play. She sees an execution, and she's singing, and this is a very, very difficult task to achieve. And
because of course she's not seeing anything.
She's not seeing anything. She's just
ask an 8-year-old child to like imagine somebody being executed and sing at the same time, and sing along with an actress that you cannot actually hear but only has an earpiece, to be able to get the timing right. It was so technical and so difficult, and she was
that for the first time. I mean, it's like yeah.
She's so wonderful in it, and I love that explanation of the ending as well, and the way that it's so open-ended. And I think it's one of the great things about this film is there's so many complexities to be able to explore and think about even after you finish watching it. So congratulations on a fantastic film, and thank you so much to both of you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.